Всім доброго дня.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let us continue. Let us get our surprise at the very end of our intellectual effort. And in this our session, we will look more not at the local level, but at the national level. And I suggest to focus at the coordination between local level and national level. That's why I would like to invite Mr. Ivan Rubskiy, who will speak on behalf of the local communities. Good afternoon. I would like to thank to the Dobra program who had invited our association of the amalgamated local communities of Ukraine to this event, and our territorial community, which had been successful, but after establishment of the association, it has become even more successful. Our association of the territorial communities actively helps local communities. As for me, I chair the platform of local economy and investments, and we assist in development of the concepts, programs, initiatives in economic development, and we carry out trainings, round tables for the territorial communities, which is a good platform for cooperation between communities and a good platform for training. So our problem issues, which we try to tackle, are focused on three areas. First of all, these are potential investments to the local communities. We have received a lot of responsibilities, and many of those responsibilities require funds, financial resources, and we are doomed to develop investments into our local communities because we have to cover all those payments to do what we have to do. We disseminate digest of the available investment opportunities. The second big focus of my subsector, this is about resource management. One of those types of resources that we have to manage, this is land or mineral resources. We lack good roads for the local communities, and in order to be able to repair all those roads, we need stones, we need sand, we need construction materials, which could be found around our communities, but we do not have the right to use them. As for land resources, there are a lot of land resources around local communities which do not belong to them, and now we work very actively how to legalize our access to the resources. The next issue, which is of primarily importance for us, are assets, and there are assets which are, for example, constructed in the fields. They are not registered in the state register of assets, properties, and they pay no taxes. And those taxes should go to our budgets. And now we struggle how to register them. And the next are financial resources. We have to pay our interest rates for borrowed money, and that's why we are thinking about industrial parks, how to develop those industrial parks which may attract middle and small size businesses to our local communities. Of course, doing all that, we have to think about the well-being of local communities. Having said that, I would like to discuss the following aspects. Studying the best practices in various areas like dairy farms, like agricultural cooperatives, and in this context, I am going to refer to the well-being in Andriivka cooperative enterprise, where they have 145 employees. They have attracted more than $100 of financial funds. They produce a lot of production, and they managed to develop this dairy, and what is even more important, they have cows. Cows are becoming a rare animal in our villages. And they manage not to they got subsidies from local budget because they're able to contribute the earned money by their cooperative farm. Also, they raised the issue about privileged loans, privileged credits with better interest rates to agricultural productions like this, and they are thinking how to become an exporter of food products. About communal enterprises, Vasilivska territorial community in Dnipropetrovsk region, they have established a special enterprise which offers overhaul of roads. They lack territorial communities in general lack financial resources for the roads and repair, and we suggest to increase of payroll up to 80%, but this would allow to have the development budget in local communities. Then some roads between villages are not transferred to the responsibility of local communities. Our residents have a lot of complaints and claims against poor quality of the that roads, when we appeal to the regional level, and today we insist that the roads should be transferred to our responsibility, because we cannot wait till the regional authorities would do that. The next issue is about tenders. Recently, we bought new equipment for the road construction, but tenders for equipment are big problem. And there might be tender on materials, but for equipment we disagree, because we bought it in our own money, and these are our roads which we wish to repair with this equipment. So these were the problems which we tried to resolve at the level of the Verkhovna Rada. Then about industrial parks. From my own experience, I would explain when we first decided to develop the industrial park, we produced the design of the industrial park. The Verkhovna Rada, we have a request to you, please make favorable requirements that may speed up the design process. And it took a long period of time, and eventually we had to finalize the master plan for the industrial park ourselves. Then state geocadastre also took a long period of time for location of the land plot. They are very slow. They do not allow us to move forward with all that bureaucratic procedures. And during that long story, when a lot of time was wasted, the local geocadastre, without no coordination with us, allocated several land plots on the territory of our technical park to other investors. And I nevertheless hope that some solution would be found, and that infrastructural subvention will be resumed, and it will be allocated for the development of Dutch industrial parks. Thanks to the Dobra program, we studied experience in Sweden, in Poland, in Canada, and we observed how the industrial parks can function. In Poland, the territorial community allocate land while the state builds the infrastructure, and then European Union provided the investor. This used to be much easier. And the last request to the Verkhovna Rada is as follows. Please do not take allocated money from us at the end of the year. Usually the money allocated for the current year, they start coming in the later half of the year, and we do not manage to use this money properly. And about land, there are a lot of agreements for the rent of local land, with which were concluded more than 10 years ago. So, and that contracts are very cheap, only 1.5% of revenue, and that's nothing actually, and we want to bring this land back to us to offer more better conditions. Then about farmers, we have many so-called individual farmers who do not process their land by themselves. They simply rent it to bigger farmers and get income. As for the state property and assets, they should be registered and seen by the tax administration. And eventually our platform of our association is to balance the needs of the national, state, and the local communities. In Sweden, for example, they have a very powerful association of local communities. They discuss the issues at the local level, at the level of the associations, and thus they are able to implement their overall national policy very effectively at the local level. So I wish to all of us to be able to ensure this in Ukraine. Thank you, Ivana. We have understood position of your association. So you are like a bridge between the national and local level, and I observed how the representatives of the local, of the national level observed. When you mentioned about 80% of the payroll tax, that it should go to the local level. So your wish is to be more supported from national level, and you wish to get more local taxes for yourself, to retain them more for yourself. So we have heard your situation. Now the floor goes to Mr. Vitaliy Bezgin, Member of Parliament, who is head of the Subcommittee on Administrative and Territorial Organization. This current our panel is a logical end of our today's conference. My experience in organization of the fora proves that at the local level, the most important issue is how to stimulate economic development. That's why we have invited Mr. Vitaliy Bezgin. Please tell us what the Verkhovna Rada is doing in it.
Thank you very much for this invitation. And There were many opinions during this discussion, and we thank for this intellectual discussion. And the Swedish experience is really great, and this is maybe in 100 years we will be able to reach their level that they have in Sweden. They created communities longer than we do now. Now about legislation, what is going on now and what we plan. I will start with some framework story. I agree that constitution, technical and framework things, locally they are not so important. Locally they need money to develop. This is fundamentally important. But I would like to tell you about the work of our community and what we will have in the nearest future. First, that we have this Wednesday, that there is a law on the basis of local policy, and there will be proper subordination of strategies. And thus, if the strategy of the community does not correspond to higher level strategy, they won't be able to get funds. And I won't go into detail about income tax. Vyacheslav will focus on this issue. About other things, state administrations are not of big concern about local self-government. There won't be new law on this. If you ask people locally, do we need a new law? No, we do not need it. We need to bridge the gaps in legislation now about resources, about sources for financing, whether to provide new sources or not. I will touch upon different aspects concerning life of the communities. We should start with this income tax. Associations say that they need 80%, but we should administer local taxes properly. Taxes should go to communities. We should be honest before communities, before the ministry and state fiscal service is not interested in administering local taxes, but they do not have sufficient staff and resources for this. They need to fill up state budget. Now about income tax. And on Wednesday, there will be 13 draft laws that will be considered concerning rates of income tax. I will mention only one aspect. We need to start not with the rate, but with the approach how to calculate this income tax. We have big cities, they have everything, and local small communities where they have some production, they have obsolete infrastructure. And they provide some services for people there. My colleague will voice his position on this. About land, for all local government bodies and for the parliament, and we believe that the draft law 2194 will be signed, whether it resolves all the problems. No, it doesn't. There are many issues. There was draft law 3131, and in the tax committee it was discussed, and also we wanted to register a new version of this draft law, and we need to move these draft laws forward. This is socially and politically unpopular topics. They will get negative response from society. Also, one unpopular thing we should speak about. This is about the land. This is about development of rural territories. So the state should... There should be monetization of the issue. So 90% of these land plots, they are sold, and others accumulate these land plots in their hands. And we need proper management from local government bodies. We do not need to politicize the process at the top level. So this is an important issue of free land plots that were allocated to people. Now, about state fund for regional development, about subsidy for regional territory. We understand that rural territories should be developed. We should stimulate communities. And draft law 4200 is needed for this, and the profile committee should consider it. And also changes to constitution. These are framework things that do not directly influence quality of life of people at the local level. And I won't go into detail. Maybe we will speak about important issues during Q&A session. Thank you. Thank you, Vitaliy. When we look at these processes, we see that people got tired concerning these issues. We understand that constitutional changes are needed, but as local development is important, and we need to find proper instruments. And people mention often fund for regional development. Vyacheslav Rublev will tell us more about legal changes and the changes in the sphere of the work of the state fund. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have this forum in Kiev. We had the forum in Volyn region. We gathered communities, and colleagues from the committee came, and we discussed painful issues concerning local self-governance. And reform of decentralization is being completed. And maybe we would like to have better results because we really care about communities. What I mean, there are responsibilities, but not enough money. And when reform was introduced, local budgets were calculated differently. There was no COVID and other challenges. Many communities now are just surviving. They lack budgets for development, and I believe that we need state regional policy, state support that will be directed to those communities that need this assistance. Of course, this is about fund of development, this is about income tax, and the state fund is really important. This fund of regional development locally deals with administrations. People cannot influence on the issues, and in our committee and some committee, we repeatedly consider these issues. We should delegate representatives of deputy court to the commissions at the local level, and we address the minister to change the commission because many are subordinated to the administration and the local deputies, and we believe that we have the associations of communities, and we believe that the representatives should be in these committees. Then there will be proper prioritization, because these people clearly understand these issues. We should understand that social facilities, kindergartens, schools, medical centers, they are really important. But state funded for regional development, I believe, first of all, should be directed at development of business projects that would bring money to communities. And I remember about a year ago, 2 years ago, in the Rivne region, there was a project that was implemented, that was supported by the Fund for the Regional Development to create new employment in the communities. And this is about profit, and people are staying in the community. We traveled to Volyn Oblast. We have shown successful enterprises. This is near a border with Poland. We understand that many people go to Poland. And one of our entrepreneurs built a facility for cattle for 3,000 heads of cattle, and people in his community work in this enterprise. They do not go to Poland. There is proper salary and for these people, and communities and business, they and it is difficult to undergo a state construction inspection, and this human factor of this inspection prevents registration of the start of construction works, despite what it is community or individuals who want to develop their business in the community. That's why this issue of state construction inspection is one of the priority issues for the community. About income tax, in Volyn Oblast, Vitaliy maybe didn't hear everything during the discussion. There were several sectors. One legal person and everyone else pays income tax, and there is a fiscal service that is in the center. They are interested in the state taxes, and they want these taxes to be paid where these taxpayers reside. On the whole, I would like to say that part of my colleagues believe that legal persons affiliates, they should get the status, and income tax should be paid at the place of the facilities. And this was mentioned by the heads. Some of them have enterprises that can be legally registered, and they may bring profit to communities. Some heads do not have such enterprises, and people who work in enterprises in other communities, they go back. Children attend schools and kindergartens, and income tax should be paid where people reside. And others who have enterprises, they say that we worked in order to bring investors, and we need to get benefit from this. Because if people do not work here, if they work in other communities, they will get a profit without environmental risks and other overloads on the structure. And in Volyn, this discussion reached the point that first, we should register these enterprises legally in the communities, and second issue, maybe we should split 50-50. 50 goes after a person when there is proper infrastructure that is supported, and people should pay for their community, and 50% is paid where this person is working. So if one community involves people bring people and create enterprise, and others will get this preference because they have people who reside in the territory, so this won't be fair. So we believe that this issue of income tax is really important, and we will discuss this issue further. And committee didn't reach final conclusion, but we will try to take into account the interest of the communities. And I will go back to the fund. We've prepared draft law 4200, and the ministry and communities are waiting for adoption of this draft law. It will regulate the use of funds, and also the funds for the fund for the regional development will increase, and it will be maybe you know that this state fund in the state fund for development, money is lacking, and social and infrastructure projects should be financed through this fund, and also centers for provision of services. 231 million was allocated by the state for these centers, and the state should have allocated 2 billion for these centers. Many communities do not have such centers to provide services. I believe that this draft law, due to committee, this draft law was started, and we should finance this issue because these centers for provision of services brings services close up to people, and these things that I've outlined, we've discussed these issues during the Evelyn Forum, and I believe that our main task, and Mr. Lukerya mentioned it, that 4200 draft law should enter the walls of the parliament, and we support this draft law, and we hope that there will be support of the deputies for this draft law. And Ivan Lukerya said that he will come soon, so now I would like to give the floor to our next colleague, and then I will provide you the floor to provide a remark. I have a small remark. I agree with Vyacheslav mostly. We work in the same committee about income tax, whether it should be at the place of residence or at the place of work. This is like about chicken and egg. It depends on the priorities in the state policy, whether it is about human capital or the attraction of investment. And based on this, we may take a decision. But there is no single position concerning this in the regions. So we should have this position. And then about the centers for provision of services. Subsidy is not enough, and the 104 communities will get money to equip these centers, and 61 will get money to establish the centers. So about reform of the fund for the regional development, we should not politicize this issue. We should communicate with Dobre and regional forums. And people's deputies, they are considered political figures by people. And this is not a rigid vertical of power, and if you have proper communication with deputies, is great, but other people do not perceive these people that they are capable to resolve this issue. And you lead, and the Dobra program, they are also are involved in this process. Maybe my colleague will add more on this. So I heard a lot of things, and now I doubt what to start with. I will start with the income tax. I will start with the main thing, with money. I look at the draft law, and I see that a lot of drafts were prepared, and no draft has calculations how it will influence different categories of the community. So I do not know what this will result in for people. There are communities where this income tax is 2 billion, and in others they have only 10 million, so 5% to 5 billion. 10 million, this is really small money. And we have 10 billion that go to the regions from the state, and 90 million go to small communities. And if we give the same amount to rich and poor communities, rich will get more, and poor will get too little for them. So please, dear colleagues, do not do this. Second, budget leveling that is connected to the income tax. If we do not change budget leveling and we change the figures, we will fail all local budgets. Third thing, where should we pay this income tax? We have Novogorod-Siversky community, 1,800 square meters, kilometers. So this, so we have poor territory there, and this territory is not done correctly. They do not have unity there, so these issues should be resolved. These are urgent issues. And how should we resolve these problems? We should do it simply. We should increase economic capability. And how should we do this? And we may do it if we involve people. This is not about land, this is not about income tax, this is not about other things. If we don't have people, we won't have any economic capability there. And people are demography. Look at demography. 15, 20 years and 50 years of age. So we have 55, 60 years of age. We have twice as many of them as young people. So in 20 years, we will have 2 times less people who are able to work. So we should help people to self-actualize in their communities. The role of the state is really big here. For development, the classic of economics say that in order to have 8 to 10% of growth in GDP, you need to have 25-30% of investment of GDP yearly. But this is not enough. We need 5% of public investment in people, in people's capital, in human capital, because business does not invest in human capital. So we have 16% of GDP and 2.5 in public investment. So we should calculate this. We should count on this. We do not have more. So this is the issue of efficiency of public investment. And what is efficiency? Efficiency, unfortunately, is identified not by the Commission, whether we are on the Commission or you are on the Commission. We have our thoughts and interests, you have your own thoughts and interests. Efficiency is identified by the right planning, by the right strategic planning, and adherence to the strategic planning in reality. So the draft law that was mentioned, that is in the Verkhovna Rada, the law on the changes to the regional policy, it is directed to right strategic planning and right implementation. This is not about commission, and it should not say to whom this should be given. We should identify where we are moving, and we should identify the stages, identify priorities, and then, in the framework of these plans, financial should be done. So if there is no money, there should not be any plans, and there should not be any plans without money. So what we see now, road fund, it is distributed in one way. State fund for regional development, they have their own distribution culture. Money is distributed differently. So people travel to one city, they travel through Samchiki. You may go there, but you need to have a good road. But in accordance with big construction, they built 3 kilometers in the field. They used this money, and so there is no right distribution of money for roads, and there should be proper synchronization. So this draft laws should coordinate everything, but the ministries, they take out some things. For example, they do not influence on this, and they do not want to deal with some issues. So we should have proper attitude to this draft law. We should have intellectual approach, as you've said. So now draft law 4200. This draft law consists of 3 parts. In the President's order, it is stated that this is stimulation and budget code.
The budget code was made a year ago. The law about changes entered the parliament 2 weeks ago, and the third component of it is just wandering around the government. And at the moment when we pass the first one about the budget, because it will pass the budgetary committee, then we'll pass the second a bit later, and eventually we will perhaps, or maybe not, pass the third one. This won't be the one package, and the idea, the overall idea of that 3 laws will be ruined. So now, summarizing, what is the most important? My encouragement to the local communities is to think about people. Look at your demography, analyze what you will have in 5 years. Just make your age and gender analysis, and you will understand what you need to build, what you need to develop. If you have 80% of population who are aged people, and 70% of them are women, this will mean one way of development. And if a majority of your population are young people and they are all believers in a faith which promotes birth rates, then this will be another way of development. If you just plan the industrial parks, you will get nothing. If you start thinking about the people, this will bring you eventually to success. If you are dreaming about something which will give you immediate results, easy and immediate results, this would not be quickly. And if you imagine that you will administer the payroll tax in your local community, this will immediately raise your administrative costs and you will get zero investments at all. I believe that the majority of people who work in this program eventually form the general perception which will change the situation for the better. I hope that later this week we will review the draft laws and we will find what to do. We have a small GDP. Without GDP, we will have no money. But without people, we will not have even that small GDP. Thank you. Mr. Tkachuk, during the previous part, there was presented the results of the opinion poll, and it proved that money are not the most important thing. The most important thing was attention to the people inside the local community. Mr. Petrakov, let us open our discussion. First question is about the Ministry of Culture and about development of the local economy. Thank you for invitation. I represent here the Ministry of Culture and Informational Policy. But I would like to refer to the Ministries of Finance position. Usually they keep saying how effectively you use your resources up to the 40% or 70% of local community resources are spent on education, whether these are investments or costs. I believe that these are investments because this is investment in the human capital. Then the investments into tourism and leisure. This is, again, these are not costs, these are investments because such people will be able to work creatively and develop their local communities. When I hear the question, what is what it is with the what is it the culture and how it is developing? In average, local communities spend up to 5% of their resources on culture. And at the same time, investments into culture are at the level of 2%, while the Europeans spend up to 30%. While for Ukraine, we need up to 50%. So my advice to the local communities is to invest into culture up to 50%. You heard about such programs as Big Restoration, Travel Around Ukraine, Tourist Magnets, media literacy program. These are about your people in your local communities. I believe that all of you know that there is such thing as Ukrainian Cultural Fund, and during that period of time, during these 3 years, the local communities had grown considerably their part in the Ukrainian Cultural Fund projects, and we even have hybrid programs, culture and tourism in the regions. And now this is a joint program of the Ministry of Culture, Ministry of the Regions, and Ministries of the Economy. And even the donor programs had joined this program. The local community, it is not about education or the municipal services, and I fully agree with Mr. Tkachuk that thinking about your local strategies, think about the needs of your local people. Now we have learned how to develop better regional strategies, and we have specific targets within national program of regional development, and we have developed new projects based on the national presidential projects, new strategy of the government. But speaking about all that, we have to rethink whether there's a totally new money. And by the way, Ministry of Finance keeps saying that a lot of money allocated to different cultural, regional, industrial products programs each year come quite often. There are a lot of opportunities, but the question is how we can use it. Yes, we know that quite a lot of money come back to the national budget. And now about the centers of creative economy. When we discuss the growth points in the regions, so we come back to the industrial country with big industrial projects, and we start thinking that we have to build up a new industrial center in a remote village, and it would start to flourish. Look, today Bulgarian mayor had shown the resource, how they used resources, made it attractive for tourists, and they flourish. You should look at the resources of your local community and start to use it fruitfully, and discover how to use additional local resources. As of now, we all work separately, local authorities, national authorities, and businesses, while you should unite your efforts. Thank you, Yaroslav. Now we have Mr. Ivan Lukerya from the Ministry of Development and of Regional Development. Now I suggest to give the floor to Vyacheslav. We'll continue to work on decentralization today later in our parliamentary committee. The challenges that we face today should be made known to us as MPs, and let us to learn how we can help you. As an MP from the Volyn region, I work with my local communities. Vitaliy works with a bigger number, even with bigger number of local communities. He could be caught at any moment in the downtown Kiev by representatives of local communities. So my message is that we will work hard to bring together local communities and to produce meaningful joint policy. I would like to respond to what Mr. Tkachuk mentioned. I absolutely agree with you that neither of the 13 draft laws on payroll tax does not contain any exact calculations. About strategic development and analysis of the demography. Ivano-Frankivsk is a good example. They have understanding of their demography, and they designed the strategy aimed at its approval. It seems to me that our committee is very open. Hopefully, we will find how this what we can do. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for moderation. Thank you, Vitaliy, Vyacheslav. And now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ivan Lukerya, Deputy Minister of Territorial Development. Would you please describe what changes we may expect, what will happen if the law number 4200 will be passed? First of all, we have a big problem with implementation of the best laws, and now we are dealing with this draft law with the reform, which is already done, and aiming just to improve it. What we had done during the last year, we had connected the Regional Development Fund with the strategic priorities, and we have not started new projects. We just continued what was already started, and we allocated money to the specific objectives of strategic planning. Then we had divided the money into subsections, and each subsection was allocated for a specific budget item, like for education separately, for healthcare separately, for some local specificities separately, etc., and assessed the demand in that money separately for each local community. Around 30% of limited resources were allocated for the development of local authorities, local development projects. And we found out that local communities, at least many of them, had no understanding what did the development project meant. And many communities just focused on construction, and that's it. You mentioned that a lot of money which allocated, they at the end of the year go back to the budget. But by the way, during the last year, we managed to spend 90% of all the allocated money. This was the biggest indicator for the last 5 years. What else we require from local authorities to plan for the future? That is based on the top priorities of state strategy. That is, they have to plan in advance, looking at the strategy. Then about institutional changes, we had approved the state strategy of regional development and action plan to it, which requires passage of 21 law, more than 240 decisions of the government, and in general, 207, that is 207 measures are required for 3 years in order to support or back up the regional policy. This will bring systemic changes to this reform. Then funding based on territorial approach for the village or urban territories. If there's rural territories and they have problems with the development, this may be similar irrespectively of the regional position. And we try to tie or correspond the expenses to the local communities. And we will separately allocate money to the Carpathian, pre-Carpathian regions, to the Black Sea regions. In order to do that, we have to reform the state Regional Development Fund, what now goes to the regions, but part of those money from this state regional fund will go to the urban or rural areas in Carpathian region, in the Black Sea region, etc., which would allow to develop those territories. And of course, strategic documents would become meaningful only under condition that they are supported with investments. partially they will go to the regional level. This is about the reform of the state regional development fund. The next, we will connect the funding with the strategies. That's why all the local communities bigger than 50,000, they have to develop their strategic development programs. And thus, money will be allocated only to those who have strategies. Then coordination between the central policies. Today we coordinate funding between different funds. All sectoral budgetary programs should be brought together and made coherent at the level of special committees at the level of the ministries. That is to prevent funding in the areas which are not top priorities. And we found out that it is more useful to concentrate funding at the level of regional development fund instead of allocating them to different target funds. For example, separate subventions at the educational or cultural level to rural areas are useless actually if they're done for the separate community. And currently we discuss how to assist local communities in support of their basic infrastructure in the regions. But that will develop, but this will depend on the local needs, depending on the available funds. So this basic infrastructural subvention is now under discussion. Then we focused on the centers of economic growth. These are around 110, 120 communities, and they would be primary partners where the government, central government, will invest. And there was one technical issue during today's discussion. The distribution of the projects based on the DFRR approach. But actually, you are asking the question whether money will be allocated based on party principle or based on what principle? Maybe you would cancel that subvention which goes to the regions via their members of parliament. So the major thing is to connect allocation of strategic money to the strategic development program. Our task is to revive the major infrastructural framework in the regions within 3 years. And irrespectively which commission will deal with that. When you discuss a small field bridge, this means development of tourism. But if this is about a big company which repairs a bridge in the village, which leads to the enterprise. You may take a list of the objects of the State Regional Development Fund for 2021. There is no one project with small impact on the social communities. These are all important projects for the local communities. There are either big importance we managed to do this successfully, the selection of projects. Thank you, Ivan. We have heard about the approach of the ministry. Ivan, now the mic goes to you, and you may refer to all the questions.
Income tax was discussed. I believe that one of the ways to have more income tax, it should be paid where people work. I will give you an example. An investor came and built solar battery in the territory of the former farm, and the territory is improved and investment will be good, we believe, but we got zero. 2 million were expected in taxes, and this is great money for our community, and we wanted to co-finance, but the enterprise was this entrepreneur was registered in another place, and taxes were paid in another place, and we got zero. And we believe that people will pay taxes, but all other workers were registered in other place, and we got nothing from the land lease. This land was not this land is outside of the town, and not less than 10% should have been provided, but only 4% were provided. So this is about investment. Income tax should be paid where people work, even communal enterprises. We should cancel tenders for our communal enterprises. For example, Nikolaev firm got the contract for removal of grass, also maintenance of external lighting Kharkiv firm got this contract. They employed our people. Some income tax was paid, but there is chaos. And Anatoliy Fedorovich said it correctly. We should consider the influence on the budget, and income tax should be paid locally, where people work and where we have our schools, kindergartens, our roads. About state investment, we are really thankful. We got many projects from state fund for development. We have infrastructure subsidy, and we believe that the subsidy should be returned. And Mikhail Ivanovich said it correctly. This was fair subsidy because it included the number of people and the territory, and this is really important, and each community may get something out of it. And also many communities cooperated with the Fund for Development of the Regions, and I haven't dealt with it myself. So I believe that our deputies clearly understand this issue, and it's great that the Ministry of Regional Development and representatives of other ministries participate, and that proper laws will be approved. And the communities, they know the problems, and they also participate. So I will provide the floor to our colleagues that we'll have at the end. And now I give the floor to Anatoliy Fedorovich, and then we will end our discussion. I had an article about solar stations, and I believe that you would like it if you read it. Everything we plan, we should first calculate everything. Second, we should consider the options, and we should choose the best option we have. We should proper model and plan, and we should see the dynamics, and we may consider all options. And we have 5 years of experience and we would like to thank our deputies. They left earlier. We thank you for intellectual discussion. I believe that our discussion was really successful, and I give the floor to our colleagues. I cannot hear them. Good afternoon, everyone.
Really, what a delightful and exciting day this is. Graduation, always a great time. Makes some of you feel younger, but so much promise and life ahead of you. So it really, two things come to mind. The first is, of course, that almost 5 years ago, when I arrived and we started doing meetings in the different oblasts and inviting communities to come hear about Dobre program, and many of you came and visited, talked with us, weren't sure, uncertain, but took the chance to join the Dobre program, and then each succeeding group, had the same process of learning about Dobre, figuring it out. Do we really want to do that? And you can see the achievements. Part of what we're celebrating today, what you're celebrating today, are the achievements, because you've done so much in these few years that you've been part of the Dobre program. I've had the honor to visit all 75 communities of the first 3 cohorts, and I can see the difference. I can physically see it in what's happened in each of these communities, and I can see it in the changes in the people, not just the officials, but in the community, in youth, activists, parents, other people who came out and got involved in the process. So it's exciting, and really it's a day to pat yourself on the back. I'm going to give you a round of applause for doing such great work and really starting the transformation of your community. But the other part of a graduation is sending you off to be on your own, or more on your own, to keep talking to your community, keep talking to other communities, your peers, keeping those connections going, and really continuing to make the improvements, because that's part of what this is all about. It's the things that you've learned and the things that you've done, you can build on those, but you can also share them with others. And I know a lot of you are already mentors for Cohort 4, and you should continue that. Reach out. So continue talking to your communities, continue the great progress that you've made, because it's been phenomenal, really. I can attest to it, others too as well. And it just was such an honor to be a part of this. And me, and I'm sure everybody else on the Dobre team and USAID looks forward to even more progress, the kind of progress you continue to make without our direct assistance anymore, because you're capable of doing that. And I'll always have fond memories of Ukraine, and I'll always look forward to visiting again and coming out into the communities and visiting you. So this is your day. Congratulations. I want to give you a round of applause for all that you've accomplished. And I know that as you go out into the world, you'll accomplish so much more and keep improving your communities. So thank you so much, and really congratulations. And we'll see you down the road in your communities.